Ben, we've just been speaking a little bit about the kind of trends in internet governance and governments pushing for stronger control. When do you think the point came that governments kind of caught on and thought, oh yeah, this internet thing, that's something we want to kind of try to regulate as well?
Well, I think there's always been a push for government to get involved in regulating the internet. There's a sort of mantra out there in the internet community that the internet was always unregulated, it was born unregulated, don't regulate the internet. The truth is that the internet has always had some kinds of regulations on it. It emerges from the telecommunication system. The question is not to regulate or not to regulate, the question is to regulate in whose interests and to what ends. Will this be regulation to design a commercial model to maximize profit for the companies that are in the market? Will this be a regulatory system to maximize the social and political benefit for the public? Which would be a pretty novel idea and new to technology and media policy. So specifically with the issue of export controls and surveillance technology, I think the light bulb moment was, of course, the Arab Spring. And suddenly policymakers realized, one, the internet really matters for foreign policy, and two, that human rights abuses committed by dictators using the network as a tool of surveillance for persecution is enabled by Western companies, including those made in the United States and in Europe, and we ought to try to do something about that. And that's sort of the state of the debate today.
And it kind of seems like, with the Arab Spring, we've seen governments waking up to what you can actually do with the internet, for good or for bad. You used to work for the Department of State, and that whole topic of digital diplomacy or soft power exercise via the internet is definitely, something we in Germany were kind of like, oh, look what they did there, and that's all very exciting. So what was kind of the spurring idea and your impressions that you've taken away from there?
It really started with Hillary Clinton. It really helped us being forward-leaning on digital diplomacy that we had the most famous Secretary of State in the world and in modern memory in the United States. And when she came to the State Department, she had just come out of the 2008 presidential election. And she gathered her senior advisors around her and said, I really believe that the internet changed everything about American politics. I believe it must be changing everything about international relations. What I want to know is what's happening and what are we doing about it? And nobody had an answer. And so that prompted her to invest a lot of time and energy in bringing people into the State Department who could try to answer that question. And she allowed us to experiment. And we built social media into our public diplomacy, not as a tool of American propaganda, but as a means to communicate with people online who had never talked to the US government and who we didn't even know existed in a lot of cases. And it has been an incredibly fruitful way for us to understand the world better as a diplomatic service. And we also really beefed up our expertise on internet policy issues that are international in nature. No one government owns the internet, no one government controls the internet, and therefore we have to constantly be talking to every other government about the big issues, like what happens when one government wants to censor content and another doesn't? What happens when a video on YouTube triggers the death of 50 people in riots around the world? How do you respond to that? How do you respond to new issues of commerce and trade across borders that are digital bits? How do you respond to the issue of export controls and surveillance technologies that are impacting international human rights principles? These are all really new issues, and governments are struggling to figure them out.
So you said, as you phrased it yourself, that this was not just a tool for spreading American propaganda. So somewhere between taking first steps in digital diplomacy and WikiLeaks on the other side, do you feel that there's a substantial change in political culture taking place in terms of how governments communicate with citizens and how open politics on a whole can actually be?
I would say there is the potential for a significant change in political culture, which some governments have been more successful at realizing than others. And we really tried at the State Department not only to be, a team of 30-somethings who were inventing new things and trying new tactics because we had Hillary Clinton saying it was okay, but to really work with the career civil service and foreign service who are fantastic in the US and build expertise and knowledge and understanding, and really I watched them embrace these tools into their line of work, into the diplomatic practice of the US government in a way that was inspiring, and it gave me hope that we are changing political culture. We are changing people's beliefs about how political communications works. And that is something that I think is promising.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this short interview. You'll be around for the next 2 days of the conference?
I will be.
So what's like the one thing you hope to take away from this FoME get-together?
What I'd like to see is a sort of comparison between how different regions of the world are coping with these issues. Because one of the things I found the State Department is people use the internet in remarkably different ways, and they have totally different views about how important it is and how the public interacts with government. And so it'll be very interesting to see the different perspectives that are brought from the different countries that are participating in the forum.
Great. I look forward to being a part of that exchange. Thank you very much.
Thank you.